Bear down, Chicago. It's the Bears Squad. Everything Chicago Bears, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Windy City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From Soldier Field to the next great chapter, the Bears Squad Show starts now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Bears Squad Show here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. The name is finally, it fits the show. We have our squad together. We have the game plan for the season, and Chicago Bears season has finally arrived. The long summer is over. It is time for some football in Chicago. Joe George, Taylor Dahl, Lauren Cox, we will be here with you every single Tuesday night at 6:30 to hang out with you, talk Bears, reacting to the games. We'll also be doing post-game shows as well. Myself and Lauren and Adam Sager will be here for an hour after every single Bears game starting on Monday night as well. So, guys, we've got some time still because the Bears are the last game of week one, but it's finally here. Taylor, we'll start with you. Welcome to the show officially. We're excited to have you. How you feeling right now about the Bears season?
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like this year it's hard to explain, honestly. Everybody asks, like, how many wins do you think they have? And it's honestly, it's a little hard to put a number on it for me personally. But it's hard to not be excited. It's hard to not be looking forward to a lot of the changes that have happened this offseason. But I still think that for me, I'm a little more nervous because I do think that they did a lot of the right things when it comes to hiring Ben Johnson and a lot of the moves that they made. But those things, you want to see those turn into wins on the field. And if not, we're going to be having a conversation at the end of the season of probably what's wrong with Caleb if it doesn't work out. And so I don't want to get there. I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited.
Lauren?
Yeah, similar energy for sure. There's always a lot of optimism for things to get better when every offseason, but especially, new coaching staff, all these changes. And yet there's a deep down Chicago Bears part of all of us that thinks, well, what's going to go wrong? When's the shoe going to drop? How is this all and fall apart here? And I think for this season, I think both of those things can happen at the same time. That yes, a lot of stuff should be better, but not everything will be better. So it's just a matter of figuring out what's going to go wrong and what's going to go right, and how well can you withstand what does go wrong, and how well have they prepared for those possibilities. And I think you look across this team, there's some stuff that you're like, all right, they think they got some options here, and there's a couple spots where you're like, they're kind of all in on this player or this addition working right, or else they're going to be in some trouble.
We're going to do pretty much a full kind of season preview. We're going to check all the boxes. We're going to do season predictions. We're going to preview the game versus the Vikings the best we can with a new coaching staff. It's obviously a lot of questions. But, guys, I wanted to start here today. When you think about the Bears team this year, let's take Caleb Williams out of the picture a little bit because we know how important the quarterback position is. But what is the ultimate X factor for the Bears to have a successful season this year? I'll start off. I think looking at the offensive side of the ball, we kind of know what DJ Moore is going to be. He's going to be a really solid receiver. But when I think about the Bears this year, what's going to push them over the top, all my eyes and my fantasy predictions are on Roma Dunze. I just feel like he can be such a game changer for this team and what the offense can be and how far it can grow. So my X factor for the Bears in 2025, it's Roma Dunze.
Yeah, I love Rome. I think last time I was on this show, I told you guys how excited I was when the Bears drafted Rome. So I'm super excited about Rome. And I think you started to see the pieces between Caleb and Rome come together last year. And it took a little time, but when it clicked, it felt like it was really fun and exciting. And so I expect that to continue. I think that Ben Johnson is smart enough to put Rome in situations where he'll succeed, where that means those contested catches. He's one of the best. He was the best in college football the year before he got drafted at those 50-50 balls. So continue putting him in those situations where that's his job is to win those battles. And so I love the Rome choice. I think for me, if I'm picking my X factor, I'm going to have to say the run game. So that means DeAndre Swift at this point. I think getting the run game going and using that consistently, and some of that's going to come on to the offensive line, and I know that. But still, I think that you've seen you just haven't seen enough, even in the preseason, of what you would expect to see from the run game. But if you can really get that going and you can see the DeAndre Swift that you have seen glimpses of in the past in his career, and you combine that with what Ben Johnson is able to do with the run game, I think that opens up everything, because at that point, then you're talking about Caleb doesn't have all the pressure on Caleb Williams, and you're able to actually score some rushing touchdowns in important situations. And it just opens up so much when it comes to a lot of things. So I think the run game for me, which I'm linking right now to DeAndre Swift, if that changes throughout the season, we'll see.
Yeah, I think that's a great point where, like, I think sometimes we miss the forest for the trees with the run game, where it's like everybody's been talking all offseason about, like, you know, are they going to make an upgrade at the running back position? Are they going to make an upgrade at the running back position? And yet, like, all throughout the process, Ben Johnson has been very complimentary of DeAndre Swift, and also talk extensively about how important the run game is going to be. So, like, if he was concerned about it, I think they would have done something, because he also has emphasized how important it's going to be. And I think they really want to be able to lean on that and have a lot of faith in being able to lean on that because of what they did up front on the offensive line, especially. And that's kind of where I come at my X factor. If I had to put it on one player, though, right guard Jonah Jackson to me is the biggest factor there, where it's like, we kind of know Braxton Jones in the left tackle position is going to be inconsistent. Like, that's kind of the devil we know at this point. And if that's all you have to deal with, you should be really good up front and be able to, you can manage a weak left tackle spot with sliding protections over there and tight ends. But we don't know what we're going to get from Jonah Jackson. Like, we know we're going to get inconsistency from Braxton. We could get great Jonah Jackson, or we could get bad Jonah Jackson. We could get injured Jonah Jackson. And it's sort of just been a, like, trust us. We think he's going to be really good. And it's like, all right, we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But if they have a right guard and a left tackle problem at some point, that's when that group becomes really harder to manage. And then that starts to affect the running game. And then it starts to affect the passing game and ripples out from there.
We're going to try to be as interactive as we can on these shows as well. So if you've got questions or comments you want to drop on YouTube, you guys are more than welcome to. Let's see. Illinois Jones says here, think how the O-line plays is the X factor, mainly Braxton Jones. Agree, like everything Lauren just said, and Braxton Jones is the left tackle officially. The Bears finally announced that after I think we all kind of figured that was happening. Bears fans for life says, bear down Lauren, bear down everyone. Looking forward to a much new, improved Bears team. I think we all are in that aspect. On the defensive side, we're going to go unanimously Montez Sweat here, because it feels like that's my only answer for, like, the X factor on defense for the Bears is, like, what is Montez Sweat going to produce this year for Dennis Allen in the defense?
I think the pass rush is obviously very important, and you could even argue across from Montez, because what does that look like? We just saw Booker's hurt, and that's an unfortunate thing, because I think a lot of people were counting on him being that year 2 jump, and some of the things that we saw in preseason was really fun from Austin Booker. But I do think for me, there's an argument to maybe be made when it comes to that across from Jaylen Johnson, because I do think you see people avoid Jaylen. That's just what it is. Also, we'll see what that injury looks like. He says that he'll be ready on Monday night. I feel like it might be a game time decision, so we'll see what that looks like week 1. But they pick on whoever is across from Jaylen Johnson. That's what it looks like. That's what we've seen. That's why Tyreek, whenever he gets targeted so much, he's had one of the higher target rates in the league the last couple seasons, because they do not want to throw the ball at Jaylen Johnson. So I think that if you're talking about across, unfortunately, Terrell Smith got injured. That really bummed me out, because he was the one person that I was confident that if Tyreek isn't working or Tyreek gets injured, Terrell would be able to come in and step in, and you wouldn't see too much of a drop off. But I still think that there's some concern on that other side of what it will look like, and whoever it is going to get picked on a lot, especially early.
Yeah, more broadly, like that feels like the X factor position, right? Like, I mean, pass rush is going to be a big question mark there, but like cornerback is one of those, but because Jaylen Johnson is injured, like because now we know it's a groin injury, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit more as things go on here. But like, is he going to play week 1? And is he ever going to get to 100% this season? Or are we always getting some form of 60, 70, 80% of Jaylen Johnson? Then if he's not out week 1, then it's Nashawn Wright and Tyreek Stevenson. So then how are you handling that? I mean, I think once Jaylen Johnson's healthy, I wonder if at some point this season we'll see Dennis Allen start Kyler Gordon on the outside and then move him to the slot in nickel, and then bring in Stevenson or Wright as the number 3 corner, but on the outside. Like, I wonder if that ends up being eventually the solution we get to there, but there's a lot of different moving parts there. And one other X factor I'll throw in quick is just Grady Jarrett. I mean, we haven't seen him at all throughout training camp of the preseason on the field, and
now he's a captain.
So like, there's clearly a role for him to play. He's been a Pro Bowler before, but he's been on the decline the last couple of seasons. So if he can pan out as like get back to being, Grady Jarrett level football, that can be a huge difference maker for this team. But if he struggles, then you got a lot of money on 2 free agent defensive linemen that are maybe a little underwhelming.
Lauren, I'm going to kick this one back to you real quick. And we'll all kind of go roundabout on this one, but NFL Top 100 came and went, and there was no Bears on it. What's up with this Jaylen Johnson thing? I don't understand. Like, are we missing something, do you think, about like how good we think Jaylen Johnson is versus how the rest of the world seems to view him? It's very strange to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is he doesn't necessarily have a reputation as a playmaker. I mean, he's a shutdown corner, but like the turnovers have never been a big part of his game, but they weren't part of Darrelle Revis's game either. Like that's not a necessity to be in this caliber of player. So I mean, I don't think there's I can't give you an answer that's going to satisfy anybody here, but I think part of it for me also was that durability was such a question mark for him that the Bears weren't eager to give him that contract until they saw him stay healthy a little bit more. So it might just be this sort of combination of things of like, yeah, he's just like a little bit, maybe doesn't get as many turnovers as you'd like, and maybe he's not as healthy as you'd like. But to me, I don't think it's accurate or fair. I mean, he definitely is a top 100 player in the NFL and probably a top 50 player, for being honest.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think that to the point of maybe you just he's not getting targeted. So if you're not winning games and your defense isn't completely shutting down opponents and you're not getting targeted, then you're not going to be talked about as much. You hear other players, though, and when Jaylen is talked about, players around the league will speak very highly of Jaylen Johnson. Anytime they talk, you see pressers of, how do you feel about the Bears defense? Jaylen Johnson's always a name that's being mentioned by opposing teams. But I do think that there's a few factors into it. And I do think that maybe I also think these lists are kind of crazy because a couple seasons ago, Mac Jones was like 70th or something on this list. So I take it with a grain of salt anyways, but it is frustrating because he deserves to be on there.
It's also point out quickly that we are in an era with a lot of like really good young ascending corners. And I think you kind of get a little bit lost in the shuffle there of like between Pat Surtain and Sauce Gardner and now Cooper DeJean last year with the Eagles, right? I mean, there's a bunch of different corners around the NFL. You're like, yeah, those are all good guys. And Jaylen belongs right in that conversation with them, but the team not as successful as some of those corners and maybe not as many big plays or like the highlight reel moments, the pick sixes, and the team just hasn't been very good either. And that all kind of holds Jaylen back in the conversation.
We'll get to some, we'll get back to the Bears here in a second, but Lauren, we did a show last Tuesday. Things have changed mightily in the division since then. I can't believe I was having to get text messages of how did the Bears lose a trade they weren't even involved in because Micah Parsons is a member of the Green Bay Packers. How do you guys feel about that's now happened in this division? Because I was just bummed when I heard the news. Taylor?
Yeah, I said live because it happened pretty close to when we were live on air for Helmets and Heels. And they were just like, how do you feel, Taylor? And I was like, it sucks. Like that. There's no better way to say, like, there's no better way to put it than it just sucks. Like you obviously, that's the last possible place that you would want to see Micah Parsons go. And now you do have to face him. There was a couple things that I kind of put into it. Number one, they're 1-11 against the Packers. So do I think that Micah Parsons all of a sudden drastically changes things either way? No. There's a lot of good pass rushers in the NFC North too. So I think that is why we just saw the Bears invest a lot on the offensive line. And there's a reason for that because there was already Jonathan Allen's and Aiden Hutchinson's and Davenport's and all of the Jonathan Grenard's and all of these guys that you still had to go up against that have had career seasons recently. So I do think there's a reason that the Bears invested and it's luckily they did, but it is still frustrating. But I think that I never want to give credit to the Packers for anything, but this is one that you kind of have to. And that's the benefits, I think, of not having the ownership, the way their ownership works. They care about wins the most. And if they think that somebody like this is going to tilt that scale a little bit towards their way, then they're going to do it. And that's what they did. I do think we just heard about the back. He has the back sprain between the L4, L5. That's something to honestly keep an eye out because I know a lot of people who have that exact issue and it's not easy to do day-to-day activities, let alone put on a full-on pass rush. So that's something to just kind of keep an eye out through the season.
Yeah, like that's some potential like silver lining stuff there. Like if there's one injury, if from a Bears perspective, like that if you trade for a guy and there's one injury you don't want him to have to be dealing with when he arrives, it's probably a back issue. I mean, not that any injury would be Not that you want your guys to have any injuries, but like that's definitely a red flag. I think that if I were a Packers fan, I'd be a little bit extra nervous about it. I mean, certainly I agree that like he makes them the clear favorite to win the NFC North and probably sweep the Chicago Bears. I mean, but what else is new?
Yeah.
The one thing I am left with a little bit is like from a Green Bay perspective, I don't know that he solves everything that was wrong with the Packers. I mean, that at the end of the day, like Green Bay was certainly a lot closer to a Super Bowl than the Bears were. And maybe they are a Micah Parsons away from a Super Bowl, but I do think it wasn't like the pass rush was the only thing that they have questions about going into the season. I mean, we still want to see Jordan Love, be successful in the playoffs. We still want to see that offensive line that they've changed over quite a bit continue to get better. That wide receiver group is very young and still needs to ascend. And then without Jair Alexander, they have a lot of holes in the secondary, specifically at cornerback. So like, I do think, not to take anything away from the trade being a good move, but like, they still have some vulnerability too. It doesn't solve all of their problems.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see just how it plays out long term. They're the first team in the NFL history to have over $100 million locked up in salary cap to two players with Jordan Love and Micah Parsons. Like that's going to be a challenge for him. And I think all we can hope for is that one day that's a challenge that the Bears have to face, is that you have players of that caliber on your roster. But we know Braxton Jones now is the starting left tackle officially. I think, again, we all knew that was going to come, but he's at some point going to likely be tested with blocking Micah Parsons this year. I guess just overall, do you guys have a gut on how long that lasts this season? Taking injury out of the equation, like, do you think he can run the table from week 1 through the end of the season as the starting left tackle, Taylor?
I don't know, honestly. That's a good question. I think that I've seen good things from Braxton. I feel like people hate Braxton more than I hate him. I know that you see the reels, that the highlights or low lights, I guess, that come up, and it's him just getting shoved back into Caleb or shoved back into the ground, or just letting a block slide right by him, not even blocking, actually just letting somebody slide right by him. And you don't want those things to happen. But I do also think that there's been moments in totality especially when he's been really like completely healthy, 100% healthy Braxton, that you've seen good moments. I feel like there's a lot of development still left to be had. But with all that being said, I hope that Ozzie is starting by the end, because if that's the case, then that means you found somebody young that can be your left tackle of the future. And then at that point too, that means you don't have questions, because I do think if they're throwing Ozzie out there, then they genuinely believe that he deserves a chance to play over Braxton. And we saw that they gave them a fair shot during camp to win over, and Braxton won it out at the end. And so if you're seeing Ozzie in there, to me, that means that at some point they're starting to see Ozzie take over what they feel and play at least in some areas better than what Braxton's doing. So I would love to see that. I think Ozzie's a massive human being, and you want that type of guy protecting your quarterback.
I have some doubts that any of the young tackles are going to overtake him mid-season without an injury happening. And the problem with that is that Braxton Jones has gotten hurt each of the last 3 seasons, or each of the last 2 seasons. So I do suspect that maybe another left tackle will start, but because of injury, not because of ability. But the reason I say that is because, training camp and the preseason is the time for players to focus on development and getting better, right? The coaches are all about, all right, like technique fundamentals, here's the 5 things you really need to work on individually. But like once we get into the season now, all of the focus is on how are we going to beat the next opponent, right? It's game planning, it's matchups, it's tendencies. They don't have as much time to sit with Ozzie and go, hey, let's really work on your hand placement here or your footwork here. Sit with Theo Bennett and really, like, they individually they'll have coaching points to work on, but like I just don't see as much player development in practice in season. Like, you get better by playing in the season, but the guys on the bench don't have a lot of opportunity to really get better if they're getting 20 or 30% of the practice reps each week if they're not with the starters. And so I struggled a little bit with whether somebody like Trapillo or Amagaji or Benedict can have enough opportunity to improve over the season when not playing. But if Braxton Jones goes down with whatever injury in week 4, I could see that young player never giving it back, because once the young player gets in the game, 3 weeks of Ozzie Trapillo playing NFL regular season games will be where he sees the most improvement just by being out there. And maybe then Braxton Jones doesn't get the job back.
All right, we'll take our first break here. I know Taylor said she doesn't love putting numbers on win total numbers, but we're going to do it. We got to do season predictions. We'll do that next here on the Bears Squad Show. Today's show is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. The NFL season is right around the corner. Literally, it's 2 days away. You can feel the buzz. Fantasy football season is here. Everyone's researching, drafting, and building their championship squads. So if you haven't joined a league yet, now's the time. And it's all happening on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, I'm playing fantasy football on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran creating your millionth league. Yahoo Fantasy is loaded with fun ways to compete and brand new features that make the game even better. With season kickoff on September 4th, now is the time to start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football, which offers so many fun ways to compete. If you want more ways to play, try the brand new Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine League mode, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated weekly until one team is left standing. If you want to play instantly with friends, try the new Draft with Friends mode. If you prefer the classics, get your crew together and go head-to-head in a private league. And if you got no crew, no problem. Join a public league, the easiest way to play. The NFL season kicks off September 4th, so don't wait. Start your league now. Draft now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. That's yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. All right, let's take a look at some season predictions here. I'm going to go, I'll start off with you for you guys. 10 wins. I'm going to do it. I think they're going to get to 10 wins. I think they're going to find a way. I'm always overly optimistic. It is something that I am very guilty of, but I really think that I believe in Ben Johnson and I believe in Caleb Williams. And I think that this team can find a way to really overcome, the shortcomings of the Matt Eberflus era and what they can do with the wide receiver room. And I believe in Dennis Allen too. I just think this team is built to get to 10 wins this year. And I think the Bears are going to be a playoff team. And it might be, again, a 3-team playoff division. It wouldn't shock me if it is this year, but we'll talk about JJ McCarthy and the Vikings at the end of the show more to preview week 1. But I think the Bears are going to be able to get to 10 wins this year and make the playoffs. Whoever wants to go next, take it.
It's hard to believe that the Bears have not won double-digit games in 12 years.
That's so sad.
500 in 12 years. That outside of the other than the Matt Nagy 12-4 season, actually they've done it once in the last 12 years. But every other year, 8-8 has been the absolute ceiling for this team. No matter how optimistic we feel each and every year, and yet something does feel different about Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen, and just a little bit this time around. Like I don't think everything is going to be fixed and everything's going to be better, but 10 is a little rich for my blood. I've been sticking at 9 as the number. 8 wouldn't surprise me, but 9's kind of where I'm at, where, by week 18, they're like, they need to beat the Lions to maybe get in the playoffs and they fall just short, or there's tiebreaker kind of things. And maybe in this division, 9 and 8 is tied for 3rd or 4th place. I mean, that's really the reality we're looking at here. And it could still be a really good positive season, but missing the playoffs and maybe even 4th in the NFC North. And it's like, well, it's still got some ways to go here.
Yeah, I kind of sit around 8 or 9. I think I lean 8 just because I think, and a lot of this also depends on the NFC North. And I know we'll get more into that as the season goes and what it actually looks like. But I do think it's a little more unpredictable this year because JJ McCarthy, we don't know. We don't know what JJ McCarthy is going to be. He didn't play all of last season. So what does that look like? Granted, Kevin O'Connell's a genius and he's been able to do a lot with a little when it comes to the quarterback position. So we'll see what that looks like. I am in kind of the camp where I think Lions have all of the talent in the world. But when you lose both of your coordinators, your play caller included, and then your defensive play caller, I do think that factors into things. I mean, we just saw it. You see it all the time. You see it with Alabama right now in college football. If you watched college football this last weekend, what a coach can do, what a coach change can do, and especially someone who was such a grasp on what they were. And Ben Johnson was a huge piece of Jared Goff development and progression. So it's really hard to predict what they'll be. And I know the Packers, when it's always the Packers, they'll win. You feel like 10, 11, 12 games, no matter what, even in seasons when they're not that good. But I'm not the biggest Jordan Love. I think he's okay. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great quarterback. I think there's a lot of ways you can take advantage of him, and people have figured that out. You blitz the guy under pressure, he's not good. Like, I feel like you're going to see a lot of just send it at Jordan Love type of stuff. And so there's just so much predictableness in the NFC North, but it's still hard to say. You still look at it as all the talent that is there, and hard to not say it's not going to be difficult. And then you have the AFC North. So you have the Bengals and the Ravens, and that's difficult. And then outside of that, you have the Eagles and you have the Niners. And I know we'll see the Niners have kind of been a little bit of a mess, but it's still the Niners who always figure it out too. So just because of the schedule, it's hard for me to pick above that. I feel like if this was last year's schedule, I probably would have them at 10, but I think I have to say 8 just because of the difficulty of some of these matchups and the way it lays out. It kind of sucks that it's like Packers 2 times in 3 weeks at the end of the season, and it's just our bye week so early. There's going to be this long stretch where you're going to have to really pray guys stay healthy.
Yeah, I mean, what we were just talking about with Micah Parsons, like who knows how that factors in with the Packers games that late in the season. It could be his back gets significantly worse or significantly better by the end of the season. Yeah. Like if he's limited in week 1, it's probably gonna be a totally different picture for Micah, what it's going to be. So that'll be a huge factor. Bears fan for life here in the chat says 9-8. Yeah, I mean, but I think 8 to 10 wins is a pretty good barometer for this team.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe, I'll notice, I don't think we heard a number from Taylor there. I heard it depends.
Oh, I said 8. I said 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I pin you down on that one.
Yeah. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's 14.
You know, and even if they're like, if the Bears are, I think I've said this before, but if they're on the in the hunt graphic, but they're like legitimately in it, unlike last year where like they're on it and it's like
they're
a kind of joke for all of us. But like if they're actually in the hunt this entire season, that means things are probably going in the right direction, to say the least.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part about this season, because I don't know if a certain number will tell the whole story by the end also, because I do think that if you're very close to winning some of the, let's say it's like the Bengals and the Ravens, and it's a game that one of them goes to overtime and the other you lose by a last second field goal, those 2 losses aren't going to feel like so heavy as the ones last year. When you lost to Washington the way you did last year, obviously I don't have to go through the whole list of all the heartbreak losses but if you keep having those are the ones where it starts to feel dysfunctional. And if it feels dysfunctional, then who cares? Like the record, I feel like will tell more of itself. But if by the end you're like, man, Caleb's good, he's getting close to that 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, and the offense is clicking and everybody's staying healthy, and I think you'll still at the end, even 8-9 wins, you'll feel good about.
Yeah, right. The season's all about how you feel about 2026 when the season is done, right? What is this season is all about setting up with a good feeling for the following season after that, and the number of wins isn't necessarily going to be fully indicative of that.
Yeah, I would think if we can go into the offseason, and I'm guessing Taylor and I's dream of Jeremiah Love being the Bears running back in 2026, it's like, well, if you put him in this offense, like how good are they going to be? But that's where I'm with you guys. It's about a feeling. My biggest hope for the Bears, though, is that going into next season, to skip way ahead, is that next year we don't have to be talking about feelings for what the Bears can accomplish. It's like real expectations. Like that's what this season's about, is getting the Bears to the point where we as fans, and I know our opinions don't totally matter, but like that we can go into next year and feel like there's real expectations that, Nick Wright, when he picks the Bears to finish second in the division, or Kyle Brandt, when he picks the Bears to win the division, that they're not being laughed at by their coworkers, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I think that's where you want this to end. Obviously, I mean, if they end with 10, 11 wins, everyone's going to be ecstatic, and you're going to look back still and be like, okay, are you building this product for the future? And I think that's one thing that Ryan Poles has done. And I know it's hard for some people to fully grasp, and they get frustrated, and he hasn't made all the perfect moves. But I do think that's the biggest difference between Poles and Pace. Was Ryan Pace was like, okay, well, I'll just give everything right now so we can win this season, because I just want to have a winning record. And Ryan Poles is looking more towards the future, and it's tired of these one-off seasons where you have one good season, you scrape into the playoffs, lose, and then you have to start all over. You were tired of hitting that reset button. So if you do feel like at the end of the season, you're like, there's a really good foundation here, now a couple pieces, and you are closer to what Green Bay feels like they are, where they're a piece or two away, a pass rusher away. I hope next year we're in that spot. I hope that next year we're saying we just signed so-and-so, and now that was the missing piece to actually run this and win the NFC North.
I will say, we should, in theory, learn a lot about Ryan Poles this season, because we kind of were left wondering after the last couple of years, are these good players with bad coaching, or are they bad players and the coaching couldn't do much with them? It's sort of the chicken and the egg of GM head coach. And in theory, Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen should be better coaches. And so then we should get a better sense of some of these Ryan Poles moves of is he accurately evaluating talent, or is they're a real problem here from the general manager. Like we should see Rome Odunze take a step forward and not be held back by the coaching staff. DJ Moore can be better. DeAndre Swift, Jervon Dexter, Montez Sweat. I mean, across the board, there's guys that were Ryan Poles acquisitions that we want to see more from, and we wondered if coaching was maybe a bigger factor for those guys. And I think inevitably some of them will prove to not be good decisions, because like any general manager, he does get some guys wrong, and some of these are not just going to be salvageable by better coaching, but maybe he's going to be proven right on a few guys that we weren't so sure about. But, oh, wow, now that he's got a real offensive or defensive coordinator that's putting them in a good position to succeed, oh, Ryan Poles really was right about, Dio Odangbo or, whoever the player might be, that, or Braxton Jones. I mean, you never know. Or Darnell Wright takes a step forward. It's like maybe there can be some validation for Ryan Poles, or maybe some whatever the opposite of validation would be there.
Did anybody, I feel like, besides just Bears fans as general, lose more than Dio when it went after the Michael Parsons trade? Because I felt like he was just getting so much hate. He was probably sitting there like, what the heck did I do? I'm just, what's happening?
Yeah, I think between that and then we talked about it last week, like Trey Hendrickson is going to make, the same amount of money basically, or as the pass rushers the Bear has, or they have the same amount of sacks as what we're hoping they get this year.
Yeah.
It's not been great. The Ryan Poles thing is really interesting, because if this season doesn't go well, the Bears fans are going to be upset because he just got a new contract. Like now it obviously doesn't apply the same way as the players, but that would be asking, like, would ownership step in then at that point after giving him a new contract and be like, oops, my bad, and like try to hit the edit undo button and get rid of that thing? Because if those guys don't take a step up, there's going to be a lot of questions. And honestly, even from Ben Johnson, from his perspective of, you just gave this guy a contract to work with me, and if he's not impressed with the players that Ryan Poles gave him, it's going to create a very interesting, I think, dynamic going into the next season.
Well, we've heard Ben Johnson talk a lot about, I forgot the phrasing he uses, like organizational, I don't know if it was stability or continuity, but he's talked like even like these last couple of press conferences and lead up to week 1, like the structure of, ownership to Kevin Warren, to Ryan Poles, to Ben Johnson, like how important that has been to him and how much he's seemingly valued and appreciated the way that's structured here. So I would imagine in some ways Ben Johnson might not want Ryan Poles. I mean, it's tricky, right? Because if they're bad, then he would want a better GM. But like part of what he values here is that they're not going to be this revolving door that fires Ryan Poles at the drop of the hat, and now all of a sudden he's got to have a new boss that maybe he didn't sign up for. If he doesn't get enough say in hiring that guy, like he seemed to like Ryan Poles, was a big part of him coming here. So unless he can hand pick his new boss, but then does that disrupt the organizational structure that they have? So he's it feels like Ben Johnson has made his bed a little bit with like, it's George, Kevin, Ryan, and Ben Johnson, and they're all going to ride or die together.
Yeah, it does feel like that, especially, I mean, Ben Johnson pretty much had his choice of whoever he wanted this last offseason when it comes to where he was going to go coach. And most organizations probably would have done anything for him. I know personally speaking in Jacksonville, if he would have said, hey, fire Trent Baalke, they would have done that, because Trent Baalke did end up getting fired because that's what Liam Cohen said. I'm putting this in quotes because we don't know that for sure. But I do think that when you have that choice and you feel like he chose Chicago, and we've heard different reasons, when it's Caleb Williams, when it's whatever the case may be, there's a lot of reasons I'm sure he came here. But what it seems like is, especially with the Ryan Poles contract, that was part of it. He liked some of the things that Ryan Poles has done, and maybe from the outside looking in, he feels like a lot of things were done the right way and it just wasn't handled correctly on the football field. And he feels like he can be the person to change that. And so this is just me kind of guessing and reading in between the lines of the way the contract happened and when Ben Johnson got here and some of the things he's done since then. But I do feel like it kind of feels like, to your point, Lauren, he's saying, these are my guys. And you don't, after one season, throw everything away. There's a lot of history of losing and building this team out of a hole that has to be done. And so it's going to take a little bit of time, which may frustrate Bears fans because they're like, okay, we've been rebuilding forever, but you've been rebuilding with the wrong people, is probably, I guess, the best way you can put that.
And to be fair to the doubters in this conversation, like I also remember when Ryan Poles insisted Matt Eberflus was his guy when he hired him, and then again insisted Matt Eberflus was his guy when he didn't fire him entering 2024, and then things changed relatively quickly. So I want to leave that open as a possibility that, sometimes plans change and change of heart can happen when things go poorly quickly.
All right, we'll take our next break here. I'm gonna reference the Mike Sando tier in this next one because I'm curious what our hopes are for where we see Caleb's growth from that, from a prediction and just a hopeful of what Caleb Williams will be. That's coming up next year on the Bears Squad Show.
The Bears Squad Show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is almost here, literally right around the corner, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So you could bet on, say, Bears Vikings in week 1, whether that's straight up or the money line, the point total. You can also bet on the Bears odds to win the NFC North or Ben Johnson's Coach of the Year odds. Caleb Williams is a long shot MVP candidate. Whatever your bet, if you win your first $5 bet, you're getting $300 in bonus bets on top of the winnings from your $5 bet. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
All right, so on the Mike Sando tier, we flipped spots there. On the Mike Sando tier, Caleb Williams comes in 23rd. What are you guys what are you hoping for that next year when this list comes out? You don't have to talk about players and like that, but how high are you hoping to see him on this list going into 2026?
I think I want to just say top half. You want to see him in the top 15 is and maybe that's like a not giving him enough credit maybe. But I do think that number one, people are going to be, we've seen this, they're harder on Chicago quarterbacks because it's just the thing. It hovers all of the numbers of everything that needs to happen. Now, granted, if he breaks the records that we've been talking about with the 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, it's going to be really hard for them not to put him higher than that. But if it's another season where you do see like a gradual improvement and there's some ups and downs, which I think we're expecting, we saw he's going to hold the ball too long sometimes. They're going to criticize that. There's some things that I think he's still going to have to work out when it comes to the season, and especially in a Ben Johnson offense. It's a lot of things happening, a lot of things that he's going to be doing differently this season, but I do think it'll benefit him throughout the year. But to me, I think I just have to aim for second half, like the top half of that top 15, top 14, I say, to start, and I would be okay, because to me that means you have improved. And I do think, like I said, the number one pick who people were putting generational tags on and the Bears quarterback, that I think puts a little bit extra away from a lot of people who are voting and making these things happen. So I think I'd be impressed with that, but I think we could see a top 10 Caleb if Ben Johnson brings out everything, all the glimpses that we have seen.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat, right? Where it's like the number, okay, what's the difference between 12 and 14? Yeah. But to me, it's about the players he's in the same general area of, who is sort of viewed as his quarterback peers. And I think that puts him in pretty much the exact same spot you were saying, Taylor, where it's like he needs to be there with, he doesn't need to be, you shouldn't expect him to be the Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes caliber. And maybe not even that immediate next tier, depending on how you want to sort of, Justin Herbert or Jared Goff or whoever, Jaden Daniels. But like, he should be right there in that conversation with CJ Stroud, with Brock Purdy, with maybe Geno Smith, with Kyler Murray, with maybe Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, we'll kind of see how those guys end up speaking on there too. But like, he should be in that conversation with those guys where it's like, oh, this is at worst an above average starting NFL quarterback. And then the idea being, well, he's only in his second year, so he should be able to continue to keep going higher. Whereas some of those guys I mentioned are maybe a little bit more at their ceilings at that stage of the process.
Yeah, past the guys you should, kind of a marker there. Past Geno Smith, past Tua, like be ahead of those guys on the list, and that would mean significant improvement. I'm curious, like, what if he reaches like the 4,000 yard mark and he does that for the first time as a Bears quarterback and gets close to the 70% completion percentage, like, will the national narrative kind of flip on him in such a way of it's like he's the first Bears quarterback to do this? Like, will they get on? I'm just curious of because it's so easy for us to glorify him in that way because no Bears quarterback has ever done it. Mm-hmm. But a lot of other national media members might be like, well, yeah, like that's what everyone does.
It's honestly insane. I was talking about this to someone earlier, that somebody like a Jay Cutler never happened. And I know there was the one year where he was close and he got injured and missed a couple games. And I think he was like 200 yards short and 2 touchdowns or something like that. And so but it's still wild because Jay Cutler threw the ball so much, and it's just insane to think about. And even in organizations where you feel like have also been in quarterback purgatory for the majority of their time. They've been able to have that happen here. Blake Bortles did it in Jacksonville. And it's like, I don't understand how we haven't had that to happen. So I do think that Bears fans will be pumped. We'll be like, heck yeah, we finally have a quarterback that's able to do this. I do think that rather than the celebration around the league from most people, it's going to be like, finally, like, took you guys 120 years or whatever it is to finally get it done. Yeah, but whatever, like, it's been a thing. Everybody always knows Bears have been defense and running the ball, and so we finally have a quarterback to do it. And I know I'll be celebrating the moment if that happens.
I've been, as we've been talking about this, been thinking about how, and I don't think this would be fair, but I wonder how much of that'll be dependent on how the other quarterbacks from his draft class do. Because I think some of that shapes the perception of him now as having a bad rookie season, because we'll look at how great Jayden Daniels was, and Bo Nix had a really strong season too. And so if Caleb Williams has a good year, but Jayden Daniels takes a step forward and Bo Nix takes a step forward, I think part of what shapes the national perception of like, oh, well, he's not even the best quarterback in his class, or maybe not even the second best quarterback in his class. Like, I think if it's just like if Jayden Daniels has a good year, but Bo Nix drops off, or vice versa, like if there's one quarterback still ahead of him, maybe there's more room for him to gain some of that national notoriety of like, oh wow, he really is living up to his draft stock. But if JJ McCarthy has a big year and Bo Nix and Jayden Daniels all play well, and maybe, you know, Michael Penix or Drake May is looking pretty good and their team wins more games than expected, and the Bears, oh, they win 8 games and Caleb, you know, got to the 4,000 yard mark, but he wasn't as good as Nix and Daniels. Like, I think that's where you're going to see some of that unfair, like, comparison criticism of like, oh, well, maybe the Bears still got the wrong quarterback, as though somehow if, you know, they'd put Bo Nix or Jayden Daniels in Chicago, like they'd be doing so much better.
Yeah, especially because their stats were all almost identical. I always point that out to people. I'm like, they had almost identical things other than the win-loss record. And that's what people are going to look at. So that is going to be it. If both of those are still looking better than Caleb, even if the numbers are what you want to see, people are going to be like, okay, well, you drafted the wrong quarterback, number one.
Yeah. I mean, the Patriots have like one of the worst schedules in the NFL this year. They're kind of everyone's darling to make the playoffs in that last wild card spot that seems wide open in the AFC. So if you were to see, you know, Daniels, Nix, May, McCarthy all make the playoffs this year, and Caleb's on the outside looking in, it won't matter if he threw 4,000 yards, because they'll say, well, he didn't win, he didn't make the playoffs. Like they'll ignore potentially the schedule and everything around it. But, you know, it's going to be interesting. Before we get to the game preview in the next segment, so you guys can take this either direction just because of where we're at with time here. So either the thing you are most worried about now that we're less than a week away from the season, or the thing you're most overconfident about. It could be a player, a position group, whatever you want. I think for me, and this is where I think it's maybe a false overconfidence, is that what we talked about earlier with Jaylen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, like these injuries that have been there. I still have this just real belief in the cornerback position that like they're going to find a way to make it work. That Tyreek Stevenson, he has shown glimpses of what he can be. I think I really still just believe in this cornerback room as a whole, that they'll figure it out, even if Jaylen Johnson is not at his best for the first couple games of the season.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say the offensive line, I'm probably overly confident in, and it scares me because, to your point, Lauren, we don't know which Jonah Jackson we're getting, but I just keep going back to, okay, he had his best year with Ben Johnson, so that's going to happen. And so I'm convincing myself that with Ben Johnson, a lot of things are going to be fixed, and I don't know if it works like that in one season at least. But I also think that, okay, you go through and you look at what he did last year. There was a lot of times, even in Detroit, when they had a good offensive line, that he added help on the left side already, adding that extra tight end over there, adding an extra offensive lineman. There were so many games I watched last year where I was like, why aren't the Bears doing that? Like the Lions constantly have 5, 6, 7 guys on the line. I don't understand why we're not doing that. And so I just think that Ben Johnson's so creative in that aspect that if things really are, if Braxton just is not able to handle somebody one day, that he's going to add that chip help. And then I'm very confident, obviously, personally in the rest of the line. And so I do think that a lot of it for me is I may be overconfident in it, but I do feel like because of that, it makes me feel like other things are going. If that sack number goes from almost 70 to high 30s, low 40s. That's a massive improvement from last year. I'd like it even less. The run game, I talked about how important that is. And to me, the offensive line affects all of those things. And so I think that's probably the one thing that I would say. And that's the one thing that when I've been having conversations with people of like, okay, well, he still holds the ball long and he still, DeAndre Swift is not, one of the top tier guys, I just keep going back to, okay, well, they massively improved the offensive line. So I need them to back me up on that.
I find myself most overconfident in both, I guess it's sort of a combined thing of the weapons being really good and Ben Johnson being really good at getting the ball to the weapons in space and like maximizing the talents of DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Luther Burden, Colston Loveland, and Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, that I think even if there are some offensive line questions like and struggles, that he's going to be able to find ways to scheme, not completely scheme around that and make it not an issue, but like still be able to have a passing game that makes plays, whether you're going to blitz as much as Brian Flores does or drop back and drop 8 coverage and only rush 3. Like this is a schematics expert that can run route concepts that create space for playmakers to make plays with the ball in their hands after the catch. And he's done it with a variety of different body types and physical skill sets, big body guys versus small, speedy guys and everything in between. So I think one way or another, Ben Johnson is a coach who will find a way to make it work with this kind of skill talent in a way that Shane Waldron with, different skill talent, but we talked a lot about the weapons last offseason and they still had some struggles. I think that's where the big difference comes is like last year we were kind of blaming it on the offensive line and the offensive coaching staff. Well, now I think this is a coaching staff we can expect to overcome when there's some offensive line issues. Cause it felt like in Detroit, the word on Jared Goff was right. Yeah. Interior pressure is super disruptive and Goff folds under it. But like that felt to me more like quarterback than offensive coordinator issue there that I think Caleb might hold on the ball too long and he'll have his own set of circumstances, but I think Ben's going to be able to get DJ Moore and Rome and all these different weapons heavily involved in the passing game, should be able to create some yards here.
All right, we'll take our final break here. When we get back, let's preview the game on Monday Night Football versus the Minnesota Vikings. How do the Bears win? What are you most interested in? It's going to happen. We'll get to all of that next year on the Bears Squad Show. Today's show is also brought to you by Upside. Are you still paying full price for gas? Stop leaving money behind. Get real cash back every time you fill up with the free Upside app. Simply download the free Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and start earning cash at the pump today. Use my limited time promo code TOUCHDOWN and get an extra 25 cents back per gallon on your first fill up. You can make up to $300 a year just from buying the gas you already needed. At first, I thought it was too good to be true, but it's totally legit. Real people are getting paid to just make their daily commutes, and you can too. Plus, you can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Don't let this offer drive on by. Download the free Upside app now using my limited promo code TOUCHDOWN for a limited time 25% gallon bonus. That's promo code TOUCHDOWN. Offers vary by user and location. Go to upside.com for terms and locations. All right, so we're here. It's almost game week. We're, two days from now, we'll start it off between the Cowboys and the Eagles, and then the NFL season goes to Brazil on Friday, and then before you know it, it'll be the Bears and the Vikings on Monday Night Football. I mean, look, the NFL, they'll have their stories the next day, like what we just talked about with Caleb Williams and J.J. McCarthy. If J.J. is better than Caleb, it'll be a huge deal. If Caleb Williams is awesome, he'll be crowned the king of Chicago the next day on national television. Taylor, just how do you feel about going into this game with a lot of unknowns for both sides?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the story of this is, you talk about JJ McCarthy, that's going to be the biggest thing on the other side of the ball. But I do think a guy like Aaron Jones, we all know he's taken advantage of the Bears quite a bit during his time in Green Bay, and also even when he was with the Vikings last year. And so I do think that the run, I could see them leaning on that quite a bit Monday night, just to not have to force JJ McCarthy into some bad situations and things like that. But I do also think we're looking on the other side, and we've talked about it a little bit already, but we don't know if Jaylen Johnson's going to be out there. If he is out there, how healthy is he? What does it look like across from him? So I do think there's still question marks around that. There's still question marks around the pass rush. I would like to hope that you find ways to create some pass rush, which is something Eberflus was not very good at. So I hope that Dennis Allen can, because that's something that I think he's going to have to be kind of creative in getting that. And I know for him, when I've talked to a lot of people from the Saints, one of the things that they all kind of agreed on is the one of the bit, which they're like, it's interesting because he's a secondary guy first, but the interior of his defensive lines have been one of the most important pieces of all of his defenses. And if his interior of his defensive line can create pass rush, his defenses have been in the top 10. And so I do think that puts a lot on a Javon Dexter, on a Andrew Billings, on a Grady Jarrett. And so if those guys are rolling, they're stopping the run, they're creating those pressures from the middle, I think we'll see a pretty good defense. And then from there, I think you'll see maybe JJ McCarthy under a little bit more pressure. But I do think for me, there's going to be a couple factors in that. And it's going to be that creating pressure in some way and being able to slow down Aaron Jones. And then obviously on the Bears offensively side, I mean, this is a lot of new. So what does this look like? Everybody all the fantasy people in my building have been like, who do I draft from the Bears? I'm like, I don't know. Like, don't ask me which wide receiver to draft. Don't ask me which tight end to draft. I truly have no idea. And I avoided it because I just don't even want to touch that. So, and I think that's part of it. What exactly are all these guys doing? How much is he using Colston? How much is he using Cole? How many times are both of them out on the field? We talk about that almost 30% that he ran the 12 personnel in Detroit. Does that get even higher here in Chicago? So there's a lot of questions. I truly have no idea what to expect when it comes to how things look exactly.
Yeah, and I think that point to me is an example of something that can be a Bears advantage. I don't want to say should, because some of those questions marks are it could be problems when it's all said and done. But like you make a great point that if I'm the Vikings trying to prepare for the Chicago Bears, I don't know how much all these guys are going to get the ball. I don't know how he's going to split reps between these guys or these running backs. And defensively, I don't know where the pass rush is going to come from. I don't know what Dennis Allen is going to do. I don't know which cornerbacks are going to be out there and how much man coverage they're going to play. And where's Kyler Gordon going to line up? Like, there's a lot for Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores to try and figure out. Whereas from a Bears perspective, like with the Vikings, for me, it's less about like, what are they going to do? And it's just like, well, how good are those guys going to be? Like we can kind of guess how they're going to handle a first year starting quarterback in his first ever start. They're probably going to take it kind of simple and slow and easy with him and try and rely on that running game and try and get the ball out quickly to Justin Jefferson. And it's more a question of like, is their rebuilt offensive line actually better? Or is there still some question marks with, Will Freeze and Ryan Kelly on the interior and a rookie at left guard there? And same thing on defense, right? We don't know exactly what mixture of coverages Brian Flores is going to do. And Ben Johnson talked today about how Flores updates his defense and does different things every year. But we do know he's going to blitz like crazy, and we do know who most of those pass rushers are going to be. The question is Jonathan Allen over the hill, or can he bounce back and still be good? How good is Javon Hargrave at this stage of the process? And how good is Marvin Harrison on the back, Harrison Smith on the back end there? Like, it's less to me a question of what they're going to do. It's how well they're going to be able to do it. Whereas the Bears, I guess, have both questions, but at least the how they're going to do it question is an advantage. That it's harder for the Vikings to prepare for the Bears than it is for the Bears to prepare for the Vikings.
Yeah, you mentioned there too with like kind of handling JJ McCarthy in his first start, and there's some recency bias of what we watched over the weekend in college football with these coordinators not wanting to let their freshman quarterbacks do anything. But I'm very curious, like how the two different coaches will handle this. Kevin O'Connell, his first game with JJ McCarthy, and Ben Johnson, his first game with Caleb Williams. Like, are they just going to let it rip from the get-go? And how will that play out for these teams? Because there's an argument to go both ways, to let JJ McCarthy on the first play of the game throw it deep down the field to Justin Jefferson and then ease him into the game. So that's what I'm just very curious, like what the game plans will be for these two quarterbacks.
Yeah, one of the things that I saw too, which I didn't even really think about this, and I saw one person tweet it, and I really haven't seen much other than that, but Brian Flores fired Ben Johnson when they were in Miami. Ben Johnson was the wide receivers coach, and Flores fired him. So I was like, there's also probably a little bit of something there, because I think that at that point, Brian Flores thought he was going to be kind of started getting out of the league. And then now here, Ben Johnson is head coach of the Chicago Bears, and they're playing each other on Monday Night Football in week 1. I feel like that's a little bit of a side story that I'm not sure a lot of people have talked about yet.
And I know somebody mentioned at the press conference today, like Ben Johnson's Lions offense didn't have too much trouble scoring on Brian Flores' Vikings. Last year scored 31 points in both those games. I know, like Vikings.
I think 30 and 4 straight.
What?
I think it's been like 30. He scored 30 on Brian Flores' defense in 4 straight games.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, in theory, that should be a pretty easy, not easy, but in theory, they should have some pretty good confidence about what the Bears can do against Flores' defense. And then on the McCarthy front, I'm skeptical because like we didn't even see Jim Harbaugh at Michigan let JJ McCarthy let loose. Like, senior or whatever his last year in college, they still were hiding their quarterback. So if they were hiding him when he was most comfortable at Michigan, I have to think he would get hidden again when he would, in theory, should be the least comfortable in Minnesota. But Kevin O'Connell knows a lot more about coaching quarterbacks and offensive football than I'll ever know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's a great point about what he did at Michigan. The fact that he went as high as he did without really doing anything. Side note here: Are you guys watching the main broadcast or watching the Manning cast on Monday night? What's the go-to for you guys?
I will watch the regular. I'm not the biggest Manning cast fan, honestly. I think that you miss too much because they're like talking about something that happened 5 minutes ago, and then you're like, hold on, what did I just miss? And it's funny. It gives you some like funny little things, especially certain people that come on. But for me to watch for the game entirety, I wish we would have had a Manning cast for the Texas Ohio. That's what I wanted a Manning cast for, is the Texas Ohio State game. That one would have been fun.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like if it's a game I care about and need to follow closely, I got to watch the main broadcast. But if it's just like Monday Night Football's on, let me just flip over to it. I'll throw in the Manning cast and hear who they're talking to. And I don't need to know anything about the outcome of this game and don't really care about these two teams. Then it's a great entertaining product. But no, I need, even if you don't love, the Troy Aikman, Joe Buck analysis all the time, it's still better than, it's still talking about the game and giving you something to work with.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys. Like I like it for like social media clips. Like I'll be as soon as someone tweets like something that Peyton Manning says about Caleb, especially whether it's probably really good or really bad, like it'll be a must watch during a timeout or just a commercial break. But like the game itself, especially for this week 1 game, I almost wish it was later in the season. So maybe we feel more confident about the Bears because there's so much, there's so much unknown with this game. Like I feel like this is the first game where when we go back to the win predictions total and where we went from 8 to 10 between the three of us. This is one of those games where I feel like personally, where like, if it's going to be 10, they're going to win on Monday night. If it's going to be 8, they're going to lose.
Yeah. And that's how, like, when I was going through the schedule, I was like, okay, well, realistically, before the bye week, it's hard for me at this point, without seeing them play a real game, it feels like a 2-2 going into the bye. And because you have the Vikings, Lions, Cowboys, Raiders, like I think the best case scenario almost is taking 2 of those. And then, I mean, if you're playing phenomenal, maybe that changes. But then you come out and it's just hard. You go into the Commanders, that's going to be a revenge game. Almost every single game this year we have a storyline with, because the Commanders, obviously we know that storyline. The Saints, it's Dennis Allen's return. And then it's the Ravens, Bengals, which that's just going to be difficult. But there's all these just like minuscule storylines for all of the games we go through, which could be good or bad. I mean, I think that Ben Johnson working with Dan Campbell and using and kind of learning out of that environment and the culture of that, they use those things to fuel them. And I do think that that's a positive thing. But at the same time, we saw last year that some of those storylines didn't help them out. But I do think that early on in the season, like especially before the bye week, if you can come out of that 3-1, I feel like then that's when you're leaning towards that 10, because you can shake out some of those ones down the stretch when you start getting more comfortable in your offense.
You talk about storylines. I think the thing I'm dreading the most for week 1 is that we know the pregame shows and maybe even during the broadcast, they're going to talk about, well, Caleb Williams wanted to play for the Minnesota Vikings and Kevin.
Oh, God.
We're going to get a lot of like that stuff that's not even relevant to the game. And obviously like so far in the past now that it doesn't matter to anything this season. And yet I think they're going to cut between those two guys. They're going to ask Caleb Williams about it, if at the interview in pregame or postgame or whatever on the set, or they'll ask Kevin O'Connell about it. And it's just going to be one giant. I don't even think distraction's the right word, because I don't think it's distracting anybody around the team anymore. It's does that just make it a waste of time? I don't know what else to describe it as.
And
I'll be on mute watching.
Yeah.
For that reason, all that alone is for that reason. I won't be watching.
I didn't even think about that, but it will be one. Caleb handles that stuff so well, though, too. And I think that's been a refreshing thing, because anytime there's been a lot of those, oh, well, we heard that you don't know how to film study, we heard that you don't know how to do this. And he's handled all of those so good that it's like, I honestly almost want them to ask him, because I know he'll have some sort of clever answer that's like a little bit of a jab at the Vikings and showing his love for the Bears. And then everyone will be like, okay, can we move on past this storyline now?
Especially if they win. Like if they win, like it's like he's gonna have a good one. Before we go, I like this question here from the chat, so we'll wrap up with this one. Nick says here, looks like you got to pick a combo here. So better season: Colston, Loveland, and Zacchaeus, or Cole Kmet and Bird. You had to pick which combo of players has the better season for the Bears. which one you picking? Lauren, you want to?
You're talking in terms of just like raw stats, like catches,
Yeah,
yards,
yeah.
touchdowns, like
Yeah.
essentially from a fantasy perspective. That for me then is probably pretty easily Colston and Zacchaeus for me. I have lower expectations for Cole and Burden. I mean, I think it's a good combo here that like, yeah, Zacchaeus is probably going to play a little more than Burden, but Cole's probably going to play more than Colston. But I just think the way Ben Johnson has talked about those sets of players, we've heard more glowing things about Colston and Zacchaeus in a way that I tend to believe. That not that he's down on Burden or Komet, but it's just like those guys have had to do a little bit more earning it and showing it. And like Zacchaeus and Loveland have been like, this guy's doing everything we want him to. And Ben seems to be a man of his word as far as getting the ball in the hands of those guys who have, truly earned it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. Actually, I'm going to go opposite mainly because I'm a big Cole Kmet fan. And I think that alone to me, I think that if you use Cole in the right ways, and you've seen it here in Chicago, what type of tight end he can be, and he can do a lot of different things. And the things that he struggled with early on in his career, he's worked on and got better on when it comes to the blocking side of things. And some of that, I think he doesn't drop the ball. I think that's a reason you always want to make sure that connection between him and quarterback is there, because he's just someone, he has one of the better catch rates or percentages when it comes to tight ends in the NFL. I really like Zacchaeus. I really do. And I think he's going to be a big part of this offense, but Cole leans me the other way. And I also do think that maybe down towards the stretch, Burden's has got, like, they just drafted Burden. You're going to want to see what exactly you have out of them. You've seen some plays, especially, and that was another guy, he's the guy that was blocking. And I think one of the things that Ben Johnson spoke a lot on is being that type of wide receiver who's willing to do the dirty work. And I think that Luther Burden's been able to do that. So I feel like maybe it's going to look like early on in the season, maybe the opposite, but down the stretch, when you really start to get that comfortability and that Cole and Caleb, you feel like they're on again, which you felt like it barely happened last year, but when they actually targeted Cole, it was really fun to watch. And then Burden, I think, will just he'll hit that halfway point of the season, and it will be hard to not put him on the field, I feel like.
Yeah, it's almost just a question of which rookie is more likely to overtake the other guy in a way.
Yeah.
So I'll split the vote then, I guess. I'm going to go with Colston and Zacchaeus because I love Cole Kmet. But part of it is the personnel. I think we're more likely to – I think we're going to see a lot of those guys together, Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland, on the field together. So there's going to be a real opportunity for both of them to get a lot of targets and be kind of that comfort blanket for Caleb. But also Colston's going to be able to push the ball down the field a little bit with his athleticism. And Burden, I just have this tiniest little bit of wait and see just because of how long it took him to get on the field and how – forward Ben Johnson was just like, he's not out here. Like he's not learning the playbook. He's in the wrong spots. So that's why I view Burden as more like a 2026. I'm all in on this guy, but just because of the injuries in the offseason, I'm a little hesitant to have high hopes for Burden because of what Ben Johnson's been saying.
And I'm like, can I say Cole and Zacchaeus? Like, that's what I want.
Yeah. I guess we could like choose your own adventure here as well.
Do your mix and match.
All right, that's Taylor Dahl. Taylor, where do we find you on Twitter?
Yeah, at Taydall1010XL is my Twitter handle.
Lauren?
I've always at Cox Sports 1. I always say it's like Fox Sports 1 with a C.
That makes sense. I'm at Joe George Radio. We'll be with you here every single Tuesday at 6:30. The three of us talking all things Bears, reacting to the game, previewing the next one, and then Lauren and I and Adam Sager will be doing post-game shows. So that will start next week, Monday Night Football. We'll be with you here right after on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. Thank you guys for hanging out with us for this first show. We will talk to you next week with the three of us. For Lauren and I, we'll talk to you on Monday night. Have a good one.